bread soup from Tuscany, the French influence on a Far East staple, and a hangover cure. This week, it's all about soup.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. This is the place where we try food from around the world, and this week's show is served in a bowl, in a cup, and sometimes in a mug. This week, it's soup. But before we do that, please rate and review the podcast and give us 5 stars on your podcast app. It helps to boost our profile and lets other people know about the show. And thank you very, very much. Since the weather's starting to cool down, I thought now would be a good time to revisit some of my favorite conversations about soup. I've learned about lots of great soups from around the world on the podcast over the last 5 years, and on this episode, we'll try some soup from Tuscany, England, Vietnam, and Colombia. A diverse set of places for sure, but all have their own tasty, rich broth and soups, and I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Toni Mazzaglia is an American who's lived in Florence for many years. She talks about the famous soup from Tuscany that's served instead of pasta.
So ribollita literally translates to reboiled, and because you're reboiling and it ends with an A because soup is feminine. So it's a reboiled soup. And why are we making soup with bread? Because the bread of most of Tuscany, especially Florence, does not have salt in it. And this goes back to there's historic reasons and taxation and things like that. But now they can afford the salt, but they don't want it in their bread. They think that the unsalted bread is fantastic. And then it goes stale after about 5 minutes. So you end up with a lot of bread, and hence all these recipes we have with leftover bread. Panzanella, ribollita, papa al pomodoro, all these different bread recipes, right? And the biggie, though, is the ribollita, because you have usually the general ingredients are going to be your base of carrot, celery, onion, and then cannellini beans. And, of course, the kale I mentioned earlier. Some people will use other greens like chicory or things with like a thicker stalk. It depends because you find it all over Tuscany. But in Florence, I find it to be made with kale, the beans. It's not too solid. It's not too liquidy. But what's happening is you're making a broth. You're adding it, and you've got the beans and the kale. And then what gives it all the body, though, is you're putting your leftover bread in there. And it soaks up all the liquid. So when you first make it, you've just kind of got this kind of stale-ish bread and all this other stuff. It hasn't really come together yet, but then when you reboil it, so generally speaking, the next day it's better because you reboil it. Yeah. Hence why you call it ribollita. And it's really good with some, high-quality Tuscan. I mean, it could be from other places, but since we're in Tuscany, high-quality Tuscan oil, a little dash of pepper, and if you want to put cheese on it, you can, but we tend to put oil on our soup here when we have good oil.
Is ribollita the kind of dish that would just be served in people's homes because you're using leftover bread, or would I find it on a menu in a restaurant?
Good question. You'll find it in a lot of restaurants. It's going to be served in lieu of pasta. So, we have our,
good.
I love my stuff on separate plates and everything's separate here. So, and not just on separate plates, but they don't bring it all out at the same time. So you get, you sit down, you have your antipasti, then you have soup or pasta, then you have your meat and your vegetables, then you have your dessert, and then you have your coffee and all that other stuff. But, the ribollita, you would generally have that instead of having a pasta, or sometimes they'll serve like a little tiny amuse-bouche of ribollita. It's like more fancy and modern Tuscan restaurants would do that. But sometimes they'll have it as an antipasto, like a little tiny mini bowl of it in a mixed antipasto. But it's something you definitely want to try, and you can easily try as long as it's cold out. You're not going to easily find it in the summer because, Italians eat seasonally, the vegetables, but also the temperature of what they're eating. They're not going to eat a lot of soup in the summer because we don't have very good air conditioning.
Alice Beaver splits her time between Italy and England. She tells me about the unfortunately named brown soup.
One of the recipes that came out was brown soup. And now the name is brown soup, but it's had other.
Doesn't sound appetizing.
It doesn't, does it? It doesn't sound good. And the name, which has become brown soup, it had a royal entry into the world, and then it fell to a name which became the brown soup of Windsor, or Windsor brown soup. But so they believe it was created by the same person who started A1 steak sauce.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then the queen liked the soup, which is basically, it started out as a kind of like a beef broth and some vegetables with noodles. And then her chef, who was also he was French Italian, he kind of fancied it up and with some vermouth and like made it quite even nicer than its original recipe. And he obviously during the Victorian age, a lot of people really wanted to be royal, and he printed a cookbook, The Modern Cook, and it had that recipe in there, the Windsor soup. And so all the cooks at that time, all the women wanted to make this soup. So the soup became very popular, a representation of royalty, but it was easy, it's easy to make because basically it's a beef stew that's cooked very long. And I mean, you can make it with different meats or whatever, but oxtail was one of the original ones, and some finished with a little bit of vermouth or some kind of alcohol if you want.
Vermouth, another Italian connection.
Exactly. But then as things kind of progressed, it lost its luster, starting at the industrialization of food and mass production. And because it was easy to and pretty cheap to make, it became kind of like a staple in like military and staple in railroad cars or whatever. And it got de-luxuryified and became like synonymous with the worst kind of British food. So that's why, for some reason, this soup is not talked about that very, very much in Windsor. But I thought it was really funny that it kind of has this history of that starts with the royal, the royalty, and ends up with, being a butt of many jokes.
Tracy Nguyen is a foodie travel guide from Hanoi Street Food Tours. She tells me about the different kinds of pho you can get when you visit Vietnam. I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned this briefly earlier, Tracy, the pho, which is PHO. A lot of Americans, they pronounce it pho, but that's not the correct pronunciation. But this is a dish. I was reading a little bit before I was going to talk to you, and I didn't realize a lot of people credit Hanoi as being the birthplace of pho. This is where it originally came from. And you said that the base, the broth, is based on a French consommé, which is a fascinating idea to me. But tell me a little bit about Hanoi pho. What makes it unique? What makes it so delicious?
Yeah, okay. So I need to correct a little bit.
Okay, please do.
It's not. Yeah, so Vietnam is a very long country, and people still discussing like if pho actually first originated from the north of Vietnam or the south of Vietnam. Actually, I think it's both at about the time, because in the south of Vietnam, we have a lot of Chinese influence. And in Chinese cuisine, they also have a very similar dish to pho. And the Chinese people that came here, and then we also combine and adjust, and then we make a more Vietnamese version of pho in the south of Vietnam. So if you come to the north and the south of Vietnam and you try pho, you can see that it's very different. Maybe because in the north it's more French influence and in the south it's more Chinese influence. As I told you earlier, in the north it's from the consommé, from French influence, and consommé is like the broth. It needs to be clarified. So the pho in the north of Vietnam, the broth is very clear. So it's like that spirit right? Clarified. And in the south of Vietnam, the broth is very dark, and everything in pho, even fresh herb. In the north, no, that's like taboo. You can add fresh herb in pho. Yeah, maybe the southern people that they come to Hanoi, maybe they don't really like it. They not really appreciate the difference. Everything in the north of Vietnam is more balanced and a little bit milder than in the south of Vietnam. And pho is no different. So the broth, you have to eat and you think and you enjoy it like slowly, and you will feel and you can enjoy all the deliciousness of it. It's like more gentle. It's a very gentle dish. All the flavor that come from the bone and the meat, and then on the side spices like garlic, pickle in vinegar, for example. Everything, all the flavor come together. That's what is the best from pho. Yeah.
I like this idea of sitting down and savoring your pho, not wolfing it down as fast as possible, but actually enjoying it and savoring it. And my understanding is that there's lots of different ways to enjoy pho as far as the ingredients go. What are some of the different ingredients that we might get in a pho in Hanoi?
Okay. Actually, pho, it's a short name a bit. You need to say phở bò if you want to mean the beef noodle soup. Because pho, is the name of a kind of noodle. The noodle you eat in the phở soup is pho. And we can have many different versions of pho, like pho soup, pho stir fried, pho rolled, like a spring roll. And we have fried pho as well. So it's many different versions of pho, and also many different topping. So the most famous topping, of course, is beef, and we also have chicken. And in some mountainous area where they don't have a lot of beef, they can even have pork pho as well. And actually, beef is the biggest proof that pho is a dish of French influence. Because in the past, in the north of Vietnam, sometimes eating beef is illegal.
Oh.
Because buffalo and cow are the biggest property of one family, and we use buffalo and cow for planting in the rice paddy field. So if we don't have them anymore, then how you say it, we cannot be as productive to work and to produce more rice. So it's illegal to eat beef unless you have proof or like the cow or the buffalo about to die or it died already, then you can eat.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're waiting for the buffalo to die before you eat it, because otherwise you're not going to be able to be as productive on your agricultural land. You're not going to have a beast of burden to plow the rice paddies for you. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Or if you eat it deliberately, then you can be sent to prison.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in the past. Now you can eat beef every day.
Sure. This is in the past, not today.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got beef and we've got chicken. Are there any of these phos that are suitable for vegetarians?
Yeah. But because the street food is more like delicacy. We eat because we like to eat, not like rice at home. When we eat, we have to eat every meal. So because it's delicacy, and in the past, Vietnamese Vietnamese had famine for a long time. So meat is something that everyone want to eat, and sometimes you can only eat some meat during the Lunar New Year. Yeah, so I tell you that so you can imagine how we appreciate eating meat. So on the street food is like delicacy. That's why most of the street food have meat inside. Of course, they can adjust and they can make the vegetarian part, the vegetarian version. But you have to know how to say it and which dish can be vegetarian modified and which dish cannot. So it's much better for a vegetarian tourist to come with a tour guide to know which dish to eat. Yeah. So for pho, we also have vegetarian pho, and we also have vegetarian pho rolled. Yeah. But to enjoy the vegetarian food, to eat best, I think people can do like our cooking class. So in the vegetarian cooking class, they can try the vegetarian dish and eat fully, not like just put out the meat.
Laura Hernandez Espinoza runs the world-famous restaurant Leo in Bogota, Colombia. She tells me about 3 different soups, including one that's a famous hangover cure. So we're talking about going out at night. You said you have a beer. You said you have some other fun dishes, some street food. So that kind of leads into this dish that I wanted to ask you about, which is called caldo. And here in Portugal, we have a soup called, this is a soup, caldo. We have a soup called caldo verde, which is very different. It's like a kale soup with chorizo on top. But caldo is something completely different. And it seems like people in Colombia have this as sort of a hangover cure. Can you tell me, is that true? And what's caldo all about? How do you enjoy that?
Of course, that's the perfect cure for hangover. And there are many versions of it. But certainly it has cebollín, which are sort of a chive, type of chive, potato, different types of potato, also cilantro leaves. That's something that it has to be in it. And I love to put a boiled egg as well in it. I like it vegetarian, but it's mostly consumed with costilla de res, which is a type of beef to make it tasty and also, well, yeah, I think to give it a little bit more of flavor. But that's the caldo, and we used to have it late at night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., when you're already drunk, and you need to be okay to go home and to wake up the next day. We also have it the next day of the hangover. We have it for breakfast. And it is delicious, and it is part of our culture. And I believe it not just in Bogota, but anywhere in Colombia.
It sounds like it would do the job. You mentioned that you like to have your caldo with a poached egg in it. We actually have here in Portugal, in the next region over, there's a tomato soup that they make with a poached egg in it. So I can vouch that, Americans might think, oh, poached egg on my soup, that sounds weird. It's absolutely delicious. And it makes me want to ask you about a soup called changua, which also has poached eggs in it. What can you tell me about that dish?
Yeah, the changua. Well,
changua
has enemies and lovers.
Okay.
You'll find that there's people that love the changua and others that find them inconceivable, like having this milky soup with a poached egg and cilantro on top. Yeah, it's another version of the caldo, but with milk. I have to say that is one of the most beautiful treasures of the Andean gastronomy. I love it. changua is my thing. And there's also version from Boyacá that they put it almojábana, which is like another type of bread similar to pan de bono, and they put it inside it. So that's even better.
Ooh, with the bread. Oh, yum. Oh, delicious. Okay, let's round out the trifecta of soup with ajiaco, I think is how I say it. What can you tell me about this dish?
Well, the ajiaco is a soup, and the etymological origin of ajiaco is from the ají, which is the pepper. And you have different types of ajiaco from Cuba to Peru to Ecuador. But the ajiaco santafereño, that's another thing. Ajiaco santafereño, it's the typical dish of Bogotá. And it was born in the 50s with all this French influence. Of course, it is what's very nice about the ajiaco is that you can find the different influences that are part of the Colombian gastronomy. So we have the Spanish influence, we have the indigenous influence, and well, there's no Afro influence in there, but it's mainly indigenous and Spanish traditions mixed up together, and it's the use of the onion, the different types of potatoes, but also with the cream. It has guascas that I don't know how to translate them, because I don't think there's a translation for it, but it's like a leaf that grows in the Andean mountains. So it's lovely. I mean, I would say it's something that represents us. Yeah, I think it's great.
Soup. After that, I need to whip up a nice batch of caldo verde here in Portugal. If you want to hear more from my guests, I've got links to entire episodes with them in the show notes at radiomisfits.com/DED253. Well, that's a wrap on this week. Next week, we're back with a brand new episode on coffee tourism with cups from all over the world, including Cuba, Malaysia, Hawaii, Costa Rica, and more. So don't miss that. Until then, get over to destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a new story about a cool spot in Portugal where there's dinosaur tracks and a remote hermitage, as well as a really odd story about where those dinosaur tracks came from. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I also just posted a video. This one's about Milan and a gelato there that's made with champagne. You can see that by clicking on the videos tab at destinationeatdrink.com or on YouTube at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and a guy who makes his caldo verde broth with scotch, Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.